Hello, friends. Welcome back to another tier list. This is going to be the carry tier list for patch 7.32D. Let's jump right into it with the dog poo tier, Phantom Assassin. So, I think the main issue with this hero is that the only viable build on her right now is the Battle Fury build. And it just takes so long to farm and get that Battle Fury that in that time span you lose the game. And I don't mean that you, like, lose the game as in your throne dies, because I understand that they extended the game of Dota 2 by adding all these fortifications. Like, games go long, but it's basically just a question of how long are you losing the game for? Because the enemy team gets some stranglehold on the map because you're spending so much time farming a Battle Fury that they have so many items on you in advantage that, like, it doesn't matter that you have a Battle Fury and get this, like, epic BKB Deso timing when they have 4 or 5 items when you have 3. That's kind of PA's main problem. There's just no other build that seems to be viable on her yet, which is why she has a 37% win rate on Dota 2 Pro Tracker. Bristleback, the Aghanim Scepter build with Viscous Nasal Goo was a very popular build for a couple of patches. It was very strong. It was a timing that you could win the game around. Basically, the enemy team couldn't fight you. They, a lot of the time, didn't have BKBs at that point, or BKB was their only item. They didn't want to just waste it. So you could run at towers because they couldn't fight you, and then because of his ulti, you have a lot of damage, and you could actually siege with Bristle. Now, because they nerfed that, in particular, they nerfed the range on that Viscous Nasal Goo with the Ags, it's not as strong as the timing, and so people are playing around like a Bloodstone kind of immortality build, which is traditionally the way that Bristleback has been played for a very long time. The problem is, a lot of heroes have built that way since TI, and that has been nerfed, and people have figured out ways around that. Mage Slayer is popular, Scotty is popular, Shiva's Guard is popular, in order to counter the Razor build with the Bloodstone and the Lesh build with the Bloodstone. And so for the same reason that those heroes are not very good, or not as good, Bristleback is just god-awful. He never becomes immortal, and that's kind of all he is supposed to do. Juggernaut, this hero, I'm a little conflicted on. If I'm being completely honest with you here, I had him in D tier, and then I looked at all the stats from DPC and Dota 2 Pro Tracker, and this hero's win rate is abysmal. It's in the 30%, so I was like, okay, maybe this isn't D tier. Maybe the spin to win build is not as good as I think it is. Why is this so bad? And the biggest reason that I can think of is that a lot of the very popular offlaners, heroes like Broodmother, Nature's Prophet, like, they're going to completely shit on a Jug in lane. If I can play against a Jug, if I see that somebody's Jug, I just know that my game is free with most of the offlaners, Death Prophet as well. Like, it just feels so easy to play into this hero, and then I also don't think he wins a lot of the carry matchups that are currently in the meta, which we will get to later. So, Juggernaut, yeah, a bit sus right now. Clinks. So, the one thing with Clinks is he does actually do a lot of damage. With Burning Barrage, you get a Gleipnir, you get a Daedalus. Like, this hero shits out damage. If you can get a 5-man black hole, he will kill everybody in it. That's not that viable is the problem. And the biggest issue with Clinks, I would say, is that if you ever find this hero with his Death Pact being down, he just dies. He has such terrible stats that like a Crystal Maiden with Frostbite in her ulti can kill a Clinks from full HP. It's really rough, and obviously carries are being constantly hunted by smoke, so that's not something that you want for your carry. So his win rate, also very low. Okay, moving on to the D tier, we have Anti-Mage, and in his case, the D stands for Dick, because you're a massive one if you enjoy playing this hero. It is a narcissist hero. You basically have to be able to 1v5 with him in order to make the hero viable on this patch, and the reasoning for that is because he suffers from the same issue that PA does. Which is you need to farm a Battle Fury. It's the only build that you can do on him right now that people are doing, unless you have a Magnus. And in the time that it takes you to farm a Battle Fury, the enemy team has such a hold over the map that your team can't farm. You can farm just fine because you can cut creep waves, but your team can't. And so you have to be the super carry that 1v5s, and that is just not current Dota. Dota's not been like that for like 5 years now. There's always a bunch of cores that are strong on good teams and in good Dota. With that being said, I will never call this hero dogshit tier when heroes like Storm Spirit and Leshrac are viable. Heroes that have high mana pools, because Anti-Mage still has Mana Void, and that is still good. So he's not good. He's okay, but he's not good. Sniper. So I've heard a lot of whisperings about this hero among carry players because he fell off from S tier to D tier very quickly. And a lot of the whisperings have been about backline jumpers being more popular because, you know, Lena carries a thing, Nature's Prophet carries a thing, obviously Sniper carry was a thing, Drow. I don't know about all that stuff. It seems a little complicated. To me, this hero is like a great idiot hero. I play it because I'm an idiot. And the best thing about him is that people weren't even leveling his ulti. It really felt like he had one ability, and that's Shrapnel. You would use that for team fighting. You would use that for laning. You would use that for clearing stacks, farming. And they nerfed that ability. And the reason that ability felt like it was kind of all of his abilities is because you get 3 of them. So in nerfing one Shrapnel, and they nerfed the radius on it, that's the big deal. They nerfed the mana cost, but that barely matters. The radius is the big one. In nerfing that radius, they basically nerfed 3 abilities at once. So no wonder he fell off. It makes sense to me. It just feels not good to play anymore. You can't, showing up the fights feels like shit. Troll Warlord. I actually think this hero is on the cusp of being really good because his net going through BKB is definitely powerful. It makes him counter all BKB heroes, which is basically carries in a nutshell. Lifestealer, Juggernaut heroes like that. But with that being said, you can still just press Mischief, for example, and he'll run at somebody else during his ult. His ult is one of the worst abilities in the game, and I suspect that it will be entirely reworked. And when it does get reworked, he will be God tier. But until then, he will remain in the dumpster. Alchemist. So I think the issue with Alk is he's actually not that bad in a vacuum. And I know I keep saying that in videos, and people are like, what the hell does that mean? I mean, if it's Alchemist versus a bunch of normal Dota heroes that are all like, I don't know, 50% average against him, which I realize that's a terrible metric. But Alchemist on another patch might be broken. That's a better way of putting it. But on this one, Timber is viable because people are picking it to counter tree. Slark is a top tier carry. Ursa is a top tier carry. These heroes don't even care if Alk gets 6 slotted. The more HP he has, the more fun they have with him when they're beating his ass. The more stacks Slark steals from him, for example. So that's the issue, is the counters to Alchemist are viable. If they weren't, he would actually be pretty good. Luna, I think the big issue with her is that the way that you would play team fights with her old Aghanim Shard was fairly unique. You could stay on the outskirts of fights, not really committing, not really having to engage in that carry 1v1 man fight that a lot of carries get into. So it gave you a way of like, okay, I can man fight if I'm strong, or if I don't win a carry matchup, I can play from a distance. It gave you options, and options win games. They removed that. The Aghanim Shard now is, I mean, maybe it's good, but maybe it's like mid Luna or, you know, off-lane Luna. I don't know. Maybe it's like a good Aghanim Shard, but it's not as good as the old one that released a Moonglaive on the Lucent Beam. That let you play carry differently, and you can't do that now, so she's just a generic carry, which is not that good. Wraith King. The thing with Wraith King that I think is a problem is, I mean, I guess it's like a list of things, but there doesn't really seem to be a build that makes sense for him. I've seen people try Radiance. I've seen people try Midas. Midas is just not a very popular item, which is another reason why Juggernaut probably fell off, because that was the build people were doing on him, but that feels a little bit too slow. The Deso build, you need like Armlet plus Deso, and a lot of carries will just get 1 item and they'll run at you right now, and Wraith King, you need 2 items. And also, this hero really desperately needs level 18. Otherwise, you just kill the fucker somewhere, and then you can hunt him afterwards, and he doesn't have this like, oh, you can't kill me, I'm gonna respawn. Like, the cooldown is so long at the early levels. You need level 18, and sometimes you need Aghanim Shard if there's a diffusal on the enemy team. So that's a very easily punishable timing. Medusa. I think Medusa is basically the worst of the like ranged melee owning heroes in the offlane, or sorry, in the safe lane. Heroes like Drow, for example. Medusa will shit on the same heroes that Drow also shits on, but just not as good. And I think the reason for that is because she needs like 3 items. And I think, like I said, a lot of games are kind of decided on like the 1 item timing right now. So Medusa's a little bit too slow. Arc Warden. Obviously, I'm going to talk about the Aghanim Scepter build here because that was the popular thing that made him remotely viable. It's what Valve has been balancing this hero around. He's playing like a magic damage build. They just nerfed that. It looks like they were happy. He had his time in the sun. They nerfed the one build that was viable on him, and people haven't really found one that seems to make him a decent carry or even mid laner currently. If you go right-click items, your clone sucks ass and is useless. So You have to go magic damage, but that build got nerfed. The Aghanim Scepter got nerfed. Gyrocopter. So Gyrocopter, there were a few builds people were doing, like Dragonlance into Disassemble into like Aghanim Scepter, or Crystallis into Aghanim Scepter. And it really does feel like once you get the Aghanim Scepter, there's a lot of heroes that are played in the carry role that will just completely dumpster you, like Nature's Prophet, for example. He can just sprout you, and you can't reach him. It's like, he obviously he outranges you, and like the hero Gyrocopter, you're never gonna get a Quelling Blade. It forces you to get a Hurricane Pike, which like fucks up the entire build. It gets really weird, gets really complicated. But the fact that there's no build that really seems to be strong in the current meta for Gyrocopter is his issue. It's very similar to Wraith King in that sense. Okay, next up we have the C tier, where I'm finally gonna stop shitting on heroes and I'm gonna start saying some nice things about them. First off, we have Weaver. I think this hero is okay. I think he basically has to be played in a carry role because all of his abilities feel like you need to get levels in them now. He was a really god tier support and a god tier hero in general before, but then they nerfed the scale. They nerfed the early levels in his abilities and made them scale better. And so it's kind of left him in this solid position for carry. And a big reason that I think that he's a strong carry right now is because he is one of the best Gleipnir getters in the game, and Gleipnir is a very powerful, popular item right now in the carry role. It lets you be very active, and it makes you very tanky, which is great. Terrorblade, I would say worst of the illusion heroes. Yeah, probably. I mean, the thing is with Terrorblade is that there are always heroes that you can pick TB against where he just hard counters them. Like Lycan, for example, who's over here in the carry tier list, is a very strong offlaner, perhaps S tier currently. And you pick TB, you press Q on Lycan, you get all his auras. And Terrorblade, a hero that obviously has very high base damage, loves getting an aura that increases your damage based on your base damage. So Terrorblade hard counters a lot of stuff. Heroes like Leshrac as well, because you can just sunder them because they do such small damage over time. He cannot kill you in a stun. So TB's decent, but not god tier. PL, I think there are certain games where you can pick PL and they just have no illusion clear. You get to that heart timing and PL basically becomes immortal. Diffusal is a strong item right now. He's a bit slow, but I think the fact that like he can be some cheese last pick where they have nothing to counter him makes him still decently viable. Chaos Knight, I've seen a few people pick Chaos Knight as a semi-solution to like the Nature's Prophets and the Linas, where you don't let these heroes do their like long range damage over time. Like these heroes are basically machine guns. They just do a shitload of damage over a long time. Their team protects them in a fight, and Chaos Knight can get a Blink Dagger, get a Silver Edge, and kind of nullify that by just insta-killing them. But They nerfed this hero pretty hard. I think they nerfed the lifesteal that he gets. And they also nerfed his stun in the early levels, so he's not as sick as he once was, but I do see him coming back a little bit. Lifestealer. Some people are picking it as an answer to like the Drow and the Lina because you can, once you get BKB, this like late game BKB plus rage talent timing, you do have like 20 seconds straight of magic immunity, which a lot of people are ranting and raving. Like, yeah, you just like stick on one of these ranged heroes and you get a Blink Dagger, like overwhelming blink eventually, and you can do some cool shit, but it is such a late game timing. But I do see Lifestealer as like a counter pick to a lot of like the strength offlaners that are being picked up right now. But if it was like a huge strength offlaner meta, like if there's, if Centaur was like S tier instead of like A tier, which is actually pretty good, but if there's a lot more Centaur type heroes that were viable, Lifestealer would be way more top tier. But somebody can like Nature's Prophet you or Death Prophet you and you feel pretty bad, but it's still decent. Pudge, this hero was god tier before. You can definitely feel the Flesh Heap nerfs. It feels like it has a lot less uptime. It feels like when it is up, it makes you less tanky. And the problem with that is honestly not in team fights. Like that's not an issue. You got BKB, like you're going to be fine in team fights. It's for farming. Like it feels like you take quite a bit of damage now with your Flesh Heap than what you did before. Or you Flesh Heap for like farming a camp, enemy team ganks you and you don't have it up for when they gank you to survive. And that's what feels bad about him, but he's still decent. Lone Druid, I'm not entirely sure what this hero's best role is. I feel like the Lone Druid fetishist players that just, sexually get off to playing this hero, like Koikfa, they'll pretty much just tell you, like, yeah, Lone Druid's good. Doesn't matter. You play him fucking 5 position. It's whatever. Like, Lone Druid players are just going to be Lone Druid, and I think the hero is generally good. I just don't really understand exactly what role it's supposed to be played in, because I feel like no matter what role you're in, you're going to do exactly the same thing, where you're, like, getting the Deso and, like, ratting with the bear. And, like, the thing is, like, the bear can definitely be killed. I think that's the one issue with the Lone Druid bear, is that it can die pretty easily if people are just smart enough to focus it. But I've seen a lot of the good Lone Druid players, they play around the Aghanim Shard and, like, the Dispel that comes from that, and the Fear, and the fact that you can, like, protect the main hero by using it on the bear. And, like, I've seen a lot of cool stuff with that. Fearing heroes like Puck and killing them, and, like, you fear them into a bash. Like, I've actually seen these, like, Excaliburs and Quakefizz do some crazy shit with Lone Druid that if you're not a Lone Druid specialist, it's not even worth picking. But if you are good at it, the hero's good, but only for specialists. It's in a very weird spot right now. Lycan. So this hero is basically in here in the carry tier list just because I think this is a god tier hero. I think it's best played in the offlane. I've even seen it be picked up mid. It's maybe like an A tier mid, because I think it does well against a lot of popular mids that you, like, wouldn't expect it to do well against. Kind of like a DK, you just go there and you farm. But yeah, he's just a good hero, so he's a decent carry because of that. Okay, moving into the B tier, we have Morphling, which I actually had as a C tier hero just a couple of weeks ago. And then I saw that people stopped doing the Aghanim Scepter build, because that was the kind of prevailing build up until the point where they nerfed it, where it doesn't have, like, almost 100% uptime. Now people are going for Daedalus, and they're playing a lot more around the talent where you get the waveform attack. And yeah, they're basically just playing around the fact that this hero just has, like, insane damage. You get a Scotty, you get a Satanic, you get a Daedalus. Like, you just completely shit out damage. And yeah, you still literally morph into another hero and, like, get their abilities, which is obviously going to be pretty good. But it's a high skill hero for sure. I think there's a lot of offlaners you can dumpster. Like, a lot of the summon heroes are not that good against Morphling. Morphling will, like, free farm and lane against quite a few of them. Yeah, he was definitely better when the Aghanim Scepter was a stronger item. You could still get it. Like, it still makes you an anti-carry, which is obviously always going to be pretty good, but it's just less uptime now, so it's not as good. Bloodseeker, depending on which DPC region you're looking at, this hero is, like, more or less popular. It's very strong against Razor, Death Prophet, Pangolier. A lot of these heroes are very viable. You pick it against, like, a move speed guy, you get the double rupture talent, you can get a refresher orb late game and get 4 goddamn ruptures. It is pretty insane. The laning is quite strong. Crystal Maiden is a popular hero. Bane is a popular hero in, like, Eastern Europe. Not that we're even talking about DPC, but, you know, stuff trickles down. I think in general against the meta, Bloodseeker can be quite good. And he is a good solution to a lot of the backline heroes. Like, you can man fight a Drow Ranger, for example, or a Nature's Prophet. Not a Lina. Nobody can man fight Lina, but you can man fight a lot of the strong carries with Bloodseeker because of the shard. Shadow Fiend, I've seen a lot of this hero being picked up recently, and there's, like, a mix of builds. People are sometimes going for, like, a magic damage build with Arcane Blink, and then Daedalus and playing around the Raise applies your attack damage talent at level 25 eventually, obviously. So it's like you're not worried about scaling, but early game you're playing as, like, a magic damage hero. Some people are going for, like, Dragonlance, Mask of Madness, and playing around the minus armor and just chunking out, like, a bunch of damage with the Daedalus, of course. Both builds have the Daedalus, and it's pretty good. Like, I think he defeats a lot of heroes in lane too, just because stacking raises is powerful. People realize this hero can play like an Ursa in lane, where you're just trying to get stacks on people, and then all of a sudden its laning became ridiculous when it was already pretty good. Faceless Void. The best thing about Faceless Void, I would say, is you pick him, and you can just chrono the guy on the enemy team. That is the problem. He's one of the few heroes that can win the carry matchup against Lina. I think it's one of the highest win rate heroes versus Lina. And, you know, spoiler alert, obviously Lina is very high tier as a carry right now. But I've heard a lot of other people say that Void is falling off a bit. Like, he was potentially A tier before, because, like, Beast is popular. He's one of the strongest offlaners, and that is a very hard matchup for Faceless Void. You know, Viper, Veno, these heroes they do damage over time, which crushes Void in lane, and these heroes are definitely viable. Nature's Prophet does damage over time in lane too. Like, so yeah, it can be hard to lane on Void, but it's also hard to pass up the fact that he wins against most of the popular carries right now. It's all about winning that carry matchup. Monkey King, The build on him hasn't really changed. I mean, I guess Diffusal is seeing a decent amount of play. Deso is seeing some play too. People just play him around doing massive amounts of damage with his ring, with his ult. The one problem is like Batrider is a super top tier hero, and that hero makes Monkey King very hard to play until you get BKB, and even with the BKB, it's still hard to play because Bat obviously can just lasso you. But with that being said, Monkey King like absolutely shits out damage with his ult. His Aghanim Scepter is fairly decent. I've seen people go for that as well. And also people are picking it as like a 4, and so it's being flexed in competitive, which of course, like I've said before, will trickle down to the pub levels. Sven, God Strength is good, and basically the way this hero works is whenever God Strength has high uptime, the hero is viable. Whenever God Strength does not have high uptime, the hero is not viable. I think they increased the duration on God Strength or something like that, or reduced the cooldown. I don't remember exactly which one it was, because in my head, I didn't even need to remember. It didn't matter. They increased the uptime of it, so this hero became stronger, and that's it. I mean, he's a stunner in the laning phase. That's always going to be good, but then it's like he scales because God Strength is strong, and you can't just... on some patches, you can kind of just kite him and fight around the God Strength, and if the uptime is high, then you can't do that, and that's what patch we're in. Templar Assassin. This hero has been a strong carry for a long time. I think she dumpsters a lot of heroes in lane. I think that she's a very high skill hero, where like if you're a mid player who's very good at TA and playing carry, she's basically S tier. There are some heroes in the off lane that can make a TA very hard to play. Heroes like Viper and Venomancer. But heroes are also under-leveled in side lanes, so I feel like with a good support, TA can actually beat a lot of the counters, which makes her arguably a stronger carry than a stronger mid in a lot of ways. But yeah, she just has not been nerfed since any of the patches where she was viable, so she's still just a very strong carry, and TA players will play TA. She's a specialist hero. Ah, Spectre. Oh, God. Okay. This one I have to admit. I was semi-convinced by Banana Slam Bundy on this one. He's another Dota YouTuber. For anybody that doesn't know, I'll put a picture of him on the screen here. The 3 Mango build definitely makes it so Spectre's laning is less dog shit. And I really do think that she answers pretty much all of the popular late game carries. Now, the problem is the same issue that you have with Anti-Mage and PA. She needs to get to like her first item or first couple of items, and you can lose the game before Spectre does anything. She needs a lot of items to do damage. You need other heroes that are doing damage on your team. So there are these like constraints that are required to make Spectre work, which is not often going to be the case in pubs. So I think in terms of pubs, she is B tier. In terms of competitive, she might be A tier. I don't want to say S tier because when we get there, you'll see why. You can probably guess. But she's decent. I've been slightly convinced by Banana Slam Kaczynski on this one. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have moved on to the A tier, and I am happy that there are some actually interesting heroes in the A tier. So let's cover some of the uninteresting ones first. So Slark is powerful. Echo Saber into Aghanim Scepter, where you disassemble the Echo Saber, is a fantastic build, and it was made significantly better when they changed Pounce so that it steals stats. It applies stacks of your Essence Flux, which is great for Slark. It gives him instant damage on his auto attacks when he starts hitting you. It feels like this Aghanim Scepter is up all the goddamn time. It's so annoying to be chased by this guy. And people are realizing how powerful Depth Shroud is, the Aghanim Shard. He basically gets 2 ults, except one goes on his team. That's stupid. I've been trying to play Legion Commander in this patch, and then Slark just Depth Shrouds the guy that I duel. And if I try to duel Slark, he just presses his ult before I get on top of him. It's very hard to play against, and there's a lot of heroes he counters with the exact same bullshit, so Slark is strong. Well, we'll cover Nature's Prophet. We'll cover the boring ones first, like I said. Drow Ranger. So she is an excellent answer to a lot of popular offlaners. She beats all the summons heroes in lane because, like, Beastmaster, you just hit the boar. She outranges, like, the Wild Axis build. Lycan, you hit his wolves. You counter heroes like Death Prophet because Drow Ranger's Aghanim Shard lets her reduce healing, and if you walk into a fight, she just kites you. You can never get on her, and the way Death Prophet beats you is by, like, running at you and, like, slowly killing you. Drow Ranger is, like, perfectly okay with that. It's like, okay, come at me. So Drow is amazing against basically the entire offlane meta for that reason, and then she also beats a lot of the carry meta because she tears through their armor. So Drow Ranger is fantastic. Naga Siren, going back to BSJ, I'm actually pretty convinced by his Radiance build. I think if you're in a game where you lose the carry matchup, you know that, like, the enemy carry is probably stronger than you. You go for Radiance and you just play to, like, out-cancer them. And but most carries you can actually beat in a carry-to-carry matchup because she presses illusions and she gets plus 200% damage. You get 2 DD runes when you press illusions. So you just sheep somebody, Bloodthorn them, and you nuke anybody from full to 0. It's quite insane. And obviously she can farm the entire map. I was playing with Skeeter the other day, and he was playing Naga, and he was flaming the shit out of us because he said, hey guys, let's not take fair fights. I'm Naga. I push every wave, and I can ult to get out of anywhere. So there's no reason to ever take a fight that is fair. And I thought that was really interesting, and it made a lot of sense why Tundra picked this hero, given that. They might actually say that it's still S tier, even though it's fallen off for some teams, which is why I put it in the A tier instead of S tier. Ursa, Diffusal build is still okay. It's decent, but most people are going for, like, a Battle Fury. And I think Ursa, a lot of the very popular heroes, mid laners, like, you know, SF is a strong mid laner, Lina is a strong mid laner, Lina's a strong carry, which obviously you can guess what tier she's in because she's not, you know, you don't see her right now. I think Ursa is really good at, like, full to zeroing a lot of very popular heroes right now. And so it's like, yeah, maybe they outfarm you. Maybe in, like, a long fight, Ursa will lose. But Ursa doesn't take long fights. He just nukes and kills one guy and then jumps out, waits for his ult, and then does it again. So he's good at playing fights in a way where the current carries and the current heroes don't like dealing with that. Okay, now let's get to the fun heroes. Nature's Prophet. The Wraithband Gleipnir build just seems to be what was needed to make this hero very strong. You really feel the attack speed from the Wraithbands. You really feel the tankiness from the Wraithbands. It pushes him over that little edge where you don't die in fights. And you pick a Nature's Prophet as a carry, and he takes every single tower, and you know, to use the terminology again, he gets this stranglehold on the map for your team from the carry position. So much so that a lot of people are flaming people currently for picking this as an offlaner because they think it's such a good carry that it's like, this is the role that it fits into perfectly. And I think a part of the reason for that is there was this, like, delayed realization of the change to his base attack time. I think they've reduced his base attack time to, like, 1.3 from, like, I don't know, like 1.5 or 1.6, something. It was already pretty good. And his base stats are literally the best in the entire game. He has the best stat gain in all of Dota, combined stat gain. But now he has one of the best BATs in all of Dota as well. So obviously he's going to be a great carry because, you know, it's the same reason Jug has always, other than on this patch and, you know, a few others, it's a reason Jug always comes back into the meta as a carry. It's like, oh, his BAT, it's Nature's Prophet is now that hero as well, but a range, and also has the best stat gains in the entire game. And also he can globally teleport. Come on, of course that's fucking good. Marcy. This is a China DPC hero. I'm honestly surprised it took this long to see her as a carry. Marcy with a Daedalus, with a BKB, with a Basher. I guess it's a lot like Ursa. People are going Blink. They're not even playing around her Rebound. They're just getting a Blink with these items, and they're blinking on the enemy Drow Ranger, Nature's Prophet, whoever the hell it is, and just full to zeroing them, and there's not much you can do. You straight up die in a single round of her ult. And it's very cool. It's very cool. I was happy to see this hero picked as a carry in China DPC, and now a lot of people are playing it in pubs, and I would recommend trying it. It might actually end up being S tier. The win rate is slowly but steadily increasing as people realize this is a carry and not an offlane, not a support. Okay, we are at the S tier, and of course, you guessed it, it's this hero. It's one hero, and she's so much better than all the other ones that she's up here on her own. This hero makes me froth at my fucking mouth. And I don't mean in, like, the Rule 34, like, good kind of way. I mean, like, I'm actually pissed off talking about her. I walk up to simply aggro the creeps so that way I can pull them away from the wave so I don't get my ass beat by her. And she hits me 5 times with her insane attack range and insane attack speed in the time that I'm aggroing the creeps. That's not fair. And also, another problem is all the heroes that beat her in the game, the Legion Commanders, the Axes, basically the heroes that just turn her against herself with a fucking blade mail, those heroes are not good against her in lane. They're melee. You get stunned. You eat a bunch of right clicks with her max Fiery Soul build attack speed. You can't lane against her. And then the heroes that beat her in lane, or at least do fine against her in lane, because nothing beats her in lane, is like Nature's Prophet, Death Prophet. These heroes are traditionally countered by Lina in the game. She dumped. So what do? I lose the lane or I lose the game. What kind of choice is that? Look, everyone's playing around one item timing right now too. So losing the lane is like, you can't lose the lane, dude. That's not an option. That really isn't an option in Dota right now. Laning matters so much. So yeah, this hero basically, she's just Fiery Soul. That's all she is. People are not even leveling her other abilities. They're going 1 point with leveling stats. I wouldn't be surprised if I saw people not leveling her abilities. Anyway, that's it for the carry tier list. I'm going to move out of the way. I think that shows you all of it. This is for all the people that came to the end and wanted to see the tier list. Here it is. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you guys, and I hope to see you in the next one.